The massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers slid open with a resonant rumble, their sound echoing through the immense hall. Ambassador Lisa Parker stepped inside, her black diplomatic uniform strikingly stark against the kaleidoscope of colorful robes and diverse forms of the alien representatives already assembled in curved rows. This was the moment Lisa had envisioned for years, Earth's first pivotal vote in galactic affairs, a chance to prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. She moved toward the human section, a modest platform tucked near the back, its placement almost a reminder of humanity's fledgling status among ancient civilizations. The chamber itself was a marvel. Crystal formations jutted out from the walls, emanating a soft, otherworldly glow, while floating orbs drifted above, translating the spoken words into countless languages. The assembly was a tapestry of life. From across the galaxy, some representatives bore an uncanny resemblance to humans, while others were so alien that Lisa struggled to comprehend their forms or movements. At the center of it all presided Council Speaker Vexar, a towering figure with silver skin and 4 elegant arms. His species, the Altarians, had been stalwarts of the Council for over 10 millennia. When he spoke, his voice carried the gravitas of ages. "We convene today to address the Zaharian threat," Vexar declared, his tone resonant. "Their empire has devoured 3 sectors in the past year. Peaceful worlds have been subjugated, entire populations enslaved, and labor camps established. Diplomacy has failed us. The time for decisive action has come." Lisa leaned forward, her pulse quickening. This was the culmination of humanity's preparation since their first foray into the stars 2 centuries ago. Earth's fleets were prepared, swift ships, formidable weaponry, and dedicated crews ready to uphold justice. "The Council will now vote on military intervention," Vexar continued. "All in favor of forming a coalition fleet to halt the Zaharian advance, signal your agreement." Lights began to illuminate across the chamber, blue for affirmation, red for dissent. Lisa observed as species after species cast their votes to take a stand. The insectoid Valderans, the gas-breathing Neothi in their environmental suits, the arboreal Sylvans with their flowing tree-like bodies, all opted for action. Lisa pressed her voting button, and a vivid blue light shone from the human platform. Earth was prepared to contribute. "The vote is unanimous," Vexar announced. "A galactic coalition fleet will be formed without delay. We now turn to the matter of which species will provide ships and personnel." This was Lisa's moment. Rising to her feet, her heart racing, she addressed the assembly. "Honorable Speaker, humanity is ready to volunteer our fleet for active combat duty. We have over 200 warships equipped with advanced technology and experienced crews." The chamber fell into a tense silence as thousands of alien eyes fixed on her. Some representatives made sounds that her translator identified as laughter. Others emitted clicks that suggested disapproval. Vexar's 4 arms moved in a gesture of surprise. "Ambassador Parker, your enthusiasm is commendable," he said, "but the Council must deliberate on the capabilities of all contributors." "Respectfully, Speaker," Lisa responded, her voice steady. "Our fleet is among the most advanced in the galaxy. Our crews have trained extensively for a scenario like this. We understand the Zaharian threat better than most." A grating voice interrupted her, a deep, gravelly tone belonging to Admiral Korak of the Draran Empire, a crocodilian species with imposing wings. "The human speaks of understanding threats," Korak said. "What threats have you faced? Your species has been in space for a mere 2 centuries. My people have fought wars longer than your entire civilization has existed. That's precisely why we can contribute," Lisa countered, striving to maintain her composure. "We offer fresh perspectives and innovative tactics." "Fresh perspectives?" scoffed Commander Zyla of the Ethereal Collective, a being of pure energy encased in a crystalline shell. "Your species is infamous for one thing above all: violence. Your history is a chronicle of endless conflict. Lisa straightened, her voice resolute. Which means we know how to fight. We've learned from our mistakes. Years of human warfare had left behind weapons capable of obliterating entire planets and strategies that, by galactic standards, bordered on atrocities. Lisa's face grew warm with frustration and shame as she responded. Those conflicts taught us valuable lessons about warfare and strategy. Lessons in brutality, Admiral Korak growled, his voice dripping with disdain. Lessons in destruction without honor. The coalition needs soldiers, not barbarians. The chamber erupted into a cacophony of alien voices, the overlapping languages creating a chaotic chorus of dissent. Through her translator, Lisa caught fragments of the criticisms. Too violent, too unpredictable, unfit for civilized warfare, too young to understand proper military conduct. Vexar raised his forearms, calling for order. Gradually, the uproar subsided, leaving only a tense silence. The Council has heard the human request, he announced solemnly. We will now vote on whether to accept human military participation in the coalition fleet. Lisa held her breath as the voting commenced. One by one, red lights appeared throughout the chamber, glowing like a constellation of blood in the dim hall. Not a single blue light emerged, except for the one emanating from the human section. Even the Yalarans, known for their pacifism and reluctance to engage in military votes, had chosen red. When the voting ended, the chamber was awash with the crimson glow of rejection. Vexar's voice broke the silence, cold and formal. The vote is complete. Humans will not be permitted to join the coalition fleet in any combat capacity. Your ships will remain in your home system for the duration of the conflict. Lisa felt as if the air had been knocked from her lungs. But, Speaker, she began, her voice trembling with urgency, we can help. Our people are ready to fight for freedom and justice. Vexar's gaze didn't waver. Your people are indeed ready to fight, he replied, and that is precisely the problem. This will be a civilized military action conducted according to established galactic rules of engagement. Human tactics and methods are far too aggressive for this operation. Commander Xyletha, the crystalline being of the ethereal collective, added, Your historical conflicts reveal a disturbing trend, Ambassador. Humans do not fight for territory or resources alone. You fight to annihilate your enemies entirely. Such methods have no place in modern galactic warfare. Lisa sank into her seat, a heavy weight settling on her shoulders as the other representatives turned to discussing coalition logistics, ship assignments, supply lines, command hierarchies, all without humanity's involvement. The session stretched on, and Lisa quietly activated her communicator to send a message back to Earth. The response would take hours, but she already knew its content. Admiral Helen Brooks and Earth's fleet, ready and waiting to deploy, would, instead, receive orders to stand down. The irony wasn't lost on Lisa. Humanity, for the first time in its history, had been deemed too effective at fighting to participate in a war. As the council session dragged on, Lisa listened to discussions of formation flying, proper engagement protocols, and honorable combat strategies. Her thoughts drifted to the grim reports from Zaharian-occupied space. Entire planets ravaged, populations enslaved, families torn apart, and children forced into labor camps. This was no mere exercise in military etiquette. It was a battle for the survival of free civilizations, and humanity had been sidelined. When the council session finally adjourned and the chamber began to empty, Vexar approached Lisa's platform. His expression, though inscrutable, carried a hint of solemnity. I hope you understand, Ambassador, he said quietly. This decision was not intended as an insult to your people. Then what was it meant as? Lisa asked, her voice heavy with restrained emotion. A precaution, Vexar replied simply. The galaxy has witnessed the devastation humans can bring in war. We prefer to handle this matter with restraint. Lisa watched as he turned and rejoined the other council leaders, his forearms moving with a fluid elegance. Around her, the chamber emptied, leaving her alone to wrestle with the bitter taste of rejection. Somewhere in the void, the Zaharian Empire prepared for war against a coalition that had just spurned its. 3 months had passed since the Galactic Council dismissed humanity's offer to assist in the war effort. Admiral Helen Brooke sat in the command chair of the Earth Defense Station, her gaze fixed on the stars through the massive observation window. Outside, her fleet of 200 warships hovered in readiness, poised for orders that never came. The communication panel in front of her blinked to life. Expecting yet another routine status report from one of her ship captains, Helen tapped the button. Instead, General Carl Davis's somber face filled the screen. "Admiral, we just received word from the front lines," he began, his voice heavy. "The Coalition fleet engaged the Zaharians at Kepler Prime yesterday." Helen leaned forward. "And?" They were almost completely destroyed. The words hit her like a blow. She had braced herself for such news, but hearing it confirmed was no less jarring. "How many ships did we lose?" she asked, her voice low. "Not we, Admiral. The Coalition lost over 800 vessels. The Zaharians lost maybe 50. Helen closed her eyes, the weight of the loss settling over her. 800 ships, thousands of alien lives extinguished, all because the galaxy had dismissed humanity's warnings and their hard-won expertise. "What happened out there?" Davis pulled up a tactical display, the screen filling with red dots marking the debris fields of Coalition ships. According to survivors, the Zaharians didn't fight as expected. Instead of keeping their distance and trading long-range fire, they charged head-on into the Coalition lines. They used ramming attacks, suicide runs, and packed smaller ships with explosives, targeting Coalition capital ships. The Coalition wasn't prepared for such tactics. It's not how civilized species fight. Helen studied the display, the grim reality of the battle unfolding before her. The Coalition had arranged their ships in flawless formations, adhering to their meticulously taught rules of engagement. They had fought honorably and had been decimated for it. "There's more," Davis continued. "The Zaharians are boarding Coalition ships, using close-range weapons and hand-to-hand combat. Coalition forces don't know how to respond. They've never had to fight dirty." Helen's voice was quiet but firm. "And the Zaharians are fighting to win." Davis nodded. "Exactly. The Coalition has been waging polite wars for millennia. The Zaharians are waging war for survival." Helen turned back to the viewing window, her eyes scanning the fleet that orbited Earth. Each ship was manned by humans raised on tales of their ancestors' wars. Brutal conflicts where survival outweighed honor and victory was the only thing that mattered. "Admiral?" came a voice from behind her. Helen turned to see Captain Jake Sullivan approaching. His ship, the USS Liberty, was among the fleet's fastest. "Permission to speak freely?" he asked. "Go ahead, Jake." "My crew and I have been monitoring emergency channels," Sullivan began. "We're picking up distress calls from Coalition survivors. They're asking for help." "Help we're not authorized to give," Helen reminded him. "Maybe not officially," Sullivan admitted, "but there's nothing stopping us from taking a closer look. For intelligence purposes." Helen raised an eyebrow. "Intelligence purposes?" "Yes. We need to study Zaharian tactics in case they ever turn toward Earth. A small task force could observe from a safe distance, purely for defensive planning." She considered his proposal carefully. Technically, the Council's orders didn't forbid reconnaissance in neutral space, and understanding the Zaharian threat was critical. "Take 3 ships," she said at last. "Liberty, Vengeance, and Storm. Stealth configuration only. Observe and report back. No engagement under any circumstances. Is that clear?" "Understood, Admiral," Sullivan replied. 2 days later, Sullivan's task force reached the outskirts of the Kepler system. The wreckage of the Coalition fleet stretched across millions of kilometers, a silent testament to the ferocity of the battle. Broken ships drifted aimlessly, their hulls ripped apart by explosions. Some still retained a faint atmosphere, their emergency lights flickering weakly against the void. Voran tacticians shared insights about the Zaharian fleet's movements, while the ethereal collective beings used their unique abilities to amplify communication and sensor systems. For the first time, humanity and their alien allies worked side by side, not as adversaries or distant observers, but as a unified force. Aboard the USS Liberty, Captain Sullivan paced the bridge. The tactical display showed the Zaharian patrol ships closing fast. They had two options: abandon the rescue, operation and retreat, or stand their ground and fight. Sullivan clenched his fists. They couldn't leave these people behind, not now. Status report, Grace, Sullivan barked. Patrol ships closing in, sir, Foster replied. They'll be within firing range in 90 minutes, still at least 2 hours to finish the rescue. Admiral Brooks gave us 6 hours, Sullivan muttered to himself, and we're going to use every second of it. The USS Vengeance and USS Storm fell into defensive positions, their weapons systems powering up. Captain Murphy's voice came through the comms. Jake, if we're staying, we need a plan. Those Zaharian ships outnumber us, and they're not going to play nice. Sullivan nodded, thinking fast. We'll use the debris field. Force them into close quarters where their numbers won't matter. Beth, I need Storm to deploy drones along their approach vector, scatter them and slow their advance. Dan, keep Vengeance mobile. Take pot shots and keep them distracted. We hold the line until the rescue's done. And if the Zaharians bring reinforcements? Murphy asked. We pray they don't, Sullivan replied grimly. The Zaharian patrol ships arrived, sleek and bristling with weapons. True to their reputation, they didn't hesitate. Plasma fire lanced through the void, illuminating the wreckage field. The human task force responded in kind, their weapons cutting through the chaos with precision. On the Liberty, Sullivan issued rapid-fire orders. Grace, coordinate targeting solutions with the other ships. Focus fire on their lead vessels. We need to break their formation. On it, sir, Foster said, her hands flying over her console. As the battle raged, the Coalition survivors didn't remain passive. Alaran engineers brought dormant Coalition weapon systems back online. Voran pilots, too injured to fight in their own ships, took control of auxiliary human drones. Even the ethereal collective lent their energy manipulation to reinforce shields and power systems. Dr. Nancy Kim, still tending to the wounded in the medical bay, coordinated efforts to stabilize critical injuries. I need those energy containment. Fields at full strength, she called out. If one of these crystals shatters, we lose an ethereal. The Zaharians pressed their attack, but the humans and their makeshift coalition fought back fiercely. Using the debris field as cover, the Vengeance darted in and out, crippling enemy ships with surgical strikes. The Storm's drones harassed the Zaharians relentlessly, while the Liberty served as a central command hub, orchestrating the operation. Captain, we've got their attention, Murphy said over the comms. They're fully engaged. Good, Sullivan replied. Keep them busy. We're almost there. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the last of the survivors were aboard the human ships. All Coalition survivors accounted for. Came the report from the rescue teams. Excellent, Sullivan said. Prepare for an emergency jump. We're getting out of here. As the human ships powered their warp drives, a final volley of plasma fire rained down from the Zaharian ships. Shields flared and buckled, but the task force held firm. Jump coordinates locked, Grace Foster announced. Execute, Sullivan ordered. Fire at will, he commanded. The Liberty's forward cannons unleashed a volley of precision shots, targeting the ship's weapons arrays and critical systems. Explosions rippled across its hull, leaving the enemy crippled and adrift. The battle was chaos, but it was a chaos the human crews thrived in. Where Coalition forces relied on rigid formations and predictable tactics, the humans adapted to every movement of the enemy. They exploited every weakness, every gap in the Zephyrian strategy. On board the USS Liberty, Lieutenant Chen called out another update. "Captain, enemy ship 4 is changing course, trying to retreat." "Not on my watch," Sullivan said. "Beth, cut them off. Dan, take out their propulsion systems." The storm accelerated, swinging around to intercept the fleeing vessel. Commander Hayes unleashed a coordinated barrage that tore through the retreating ship's shields. At the same time, the Vengeance delivered another point-blank strike, severing the enemy's engines and leaving it defenseless. "Two left," Sullivan muttered. "Let's finish this." The Zephyrians, realizing their mistake, shifted to more desperate measures. One of their remaining ships charged toward the Liberty, weapons blazing in an attempt to ram. Sullivan's crew reacted instantly. "Deploy countermeasures," he ordered. Flare bursts and chaff filled the space around the Liberty, confusing the enemy ship's targeting systems. At the last moment, the Liberty rolled aside, narrowly avoiding collision. As the Zephyrian ship passed, Sullivan's gunners fired a concentrated barrage into its engines, triggering a catastrophic explosion. The final Zephyrian vessel hesitated, seeming unsure of its next move. Before it could react, the combined firepower of the Storm and Vengeance obliterated it in a single, decisive volley. The battlefield fell silent, save for the occasional crackle of damaged systems on the drifting wrecks. Captain Sullivan surveyed the scene on the main screen. "Grace, status on the rescue teams?" "All survivors are aboard," she replied. "We've accounted for everyone, Captain." "Good," Sullivan said. "Send a message to the fleet. Mission accomplished. Let's get out of here." The human task force and their rescued allies jumped to warp, leaving behind a shattered Zephyrian patrol force. For the coalition survivors, the experience had been eye-opening. They had seen firsthand what humanity could do in combat. Not just the ferocity of their tactics, but the lengths they were willing to go to save lives. Back aboard the Liberty, Sullivan leaned back in his chair, exhaustion finally catching up with him. "Captain," Grace said, "incoming messages from the rescued crews. They're thanking us for saving them, for showing them what real soldiers look like." Sullivan smiled faintly. "It's not about being soldiers, Grace. It's about doing what's right." The galaxy had seen how humans fought, and more importantly, why they fought. Sullivan had. No doubt the Council would hear about this battle. He didn't know how they'd react, but he knew one thing for certain. Humanity had proven it could make a difference. And this was only the beginning. "What are your orders?" Admiral Brooks stared at Sullivan for a long moment. She knew the situation had shifted irreversibly. Humanity had proven its worth not just as fighters, but as saviors who fought with both skill and compassion, qualities the coalition forces sorely lacked in this war. "Captain Sullivan," Brooks finally said, her tone firm but carrying a trace of pride, "you've put us in a difficult position. The Council won't be pleased, but neither can they ignore the results of your actions." She paused as though weighing her words carefully. "Return to base immediately with the survivors and the captured Zephyrian ship. I'll handle the Council. In the meantime, prepare your crew for the possibility of further operations. This war is far from over." "Understood, Admiral," Sullivan said, his voice steady. "We'll be ready." As the Liberty, Storm, and Vengeance escorted the coalition survivors and the damaged Zephyrian vessel back toward Earth space, the mood aboard the human ships was a mix of exhaustion and cautious optimism. In the medical bay, Dr. Kim had managed to stabilize the injured Zephyrian soldier. "Thank you," the soldier rasped in broken galactic common, its 4 eyes blinking slowly. Dr. Kim smiled gently. "You're welcome. Let's hope someday your people and mine can meet under better circumstances." Back on Earth Defense Station, Admiral Brooks prepared for the political storm she knew was coming. The Galactic Council would demand explanations, impose sanctions, and perhaps even try to isolate humanity further. But Brooks also knew that the Council's military leaders were now acutely aware of a simple truth. They could not win this war without human help. Humanity had shown that it was more than a species of warriors. It was a species that valued life, even in the midst of war. And now the galaxy was beginning to see that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its ability to destroy, but its refusal to abandon those in need, no matter the cost. As Sullivan's task force approached Earth, Grace Foster intercepted a transmission from a coalition fleet commander. To the human vessels, thank you. We owe you our lives. The galaxy owes you its future. Sullivan leaned back in his chair, exhaustion giving way to a quiet sense of purpose. This wasn't the end of the fight, far from it, but for the first time, humanity had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to fight, not just with skill, but with heart. Vexar replied, his forearms shifting in an intricate pattern that Sullivan assumed signified curiosity. How many wars have the Coalition fought in the last 1,000 years? 4, Vexar said, his tone neutral. And how many of those wars did you win? Vexar hesitated for a moment before responding. 1. The others ended in stalemates or treaties. Sullivan nodded. And how many wars have humans fought in the last 1,000 years? Vexar's expression shifted slightly, a mix of unease and intrigue. Far too many to count, I imagine. You're right, and we've won most of them. Not because we wanted to fight, but because we had to. We fought to survive, to protect our people, and to ensure our future. We didn't follow rules when those rules meant losing everything we cared about. And at Kepler Prime, we did what we've always done. We adapted, we fought, and we won. Vexar studied Sullivan silently for a long moment, his 4 eyes narrowing. The Council views your methods as dangerous, reckless. They fear what your kind might do if given free rein. Sullivan crossed his arms, meeting Vexar's gaze. And yet, it's those methods that saved over 300 Coalition lives. Methods that the Coalition's so-called established doctrine couldn't even imagine, let alone counter. You don't need to fear us, Speaker. You need to learn from us. The room fell silent. Finally, Vexar spoke, his tone softer but still guarded. Your actions have forced the Council to reconsider many things. They are reluctant to admit it, but they know they need your kind if we are to have any hope of defeating the Zephyrians. However, this does not absolve you of your insubordination, Sullivan smirked faintly. Then make us a deal. Instead of punishing us, let us train your fleets. Let us show them how to fight a war that isn't bound by outdated traditions. If the Council truly cares about victory, they'll listen. Vexar tilted his head, his forearms moving thoughtfully. The Council will not be so easily convinced. But the voices of the survivors you saved carry weight. They speak highly of you and your crew. Perhaps their testimony will sway the balance. Sullivan stepped closer, his voice steady. You know it will. You've seen the reports. The galaxy is watching, Speaker. You can either let fear of change destroy the Coalition, or let us help you save it. Vexar turned to leave, pausing at the doorway. I will take your words to the Council, Captain. But tread carefully. Even heroes can become threats if they push too far. As the door closed behind him, Sullivan sat back on the oversized bed. His crew exchanged looks of cautious optimism from their neighboring cells. Think it'll work? Murphy asked. It has to, Sullivan replied. The galaxy's running out of options, and so are we. Back on Earth, Admiral Brooks received a coded message from Proxima Base. The Council was debating humanity's future role in the war. Meanwhile, reports continued to pour in from Coalition fleets requesting human advisors and support. Brooks smiled grimly. The tide was turning. Whether the Council liked it or not, humanity had already proven itself indispensable. Rivera continued, his voice steady despite the constraints of his detention cell. Yes, we disobeyed, but we didn't violate our duty to protect lives. If that's a crime, then we're guilty. But ask yourself this. If it were your family trapped in the wreckage, Would you want someone who follows rules or someone who fights to save them? The broadcast sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Coalition citizens, military personnel, and even some council representatives began questioning the council's decisions. Protests erupted on several coalition worlds, with civilians demanding that humanity be allowed to join the war effort. The phrase, "We need the humans," became a rallying cry. Back on Proxima Base, Speaker Vexar convened a private session with key council members. The room was filled with holographic projections of various species, each representing their homeworlds. "We are losing this war," Vexar began, his tone heavy. "Our fleets are being annihilated, our soldiers outmatched. The Zephyrians do not fight with honor. They fight to conquer, and we continue to lose because we refuse to adapt." A murmured chorus of agreement filled the chamber. Humanity has demonstrated unconventional methods, ones that the Zephyrians clearly fear. We may not approve of their tactics, but we cannot deny their effectiveness. If we are to survive, we must reconsider our stance on human participation. One council member, a stoic reptilian from the Vren Consortium, hissed in disapproval. "Their methods are brutal. Their defiance of our orders unacceptable. How can we trust them not to turn their aggression on us once the war is over?" Vexar raised a hand, his forearms moving in a calming gesture. "Trust must be earned, and humanity has begun to earn it. The survivors of Kepler Prime have vouched for them. Their actions, while unorthodox, saved lives, and their crews showed respect for life, even tending to wounded Zephyrians." Another member, a crystalline being from the ethereal collective, spoke up. "The people are demanding their inclusion. We risk losing public support if we do not act. The Zephyrians are a greater threat than humanity's unconventional methods." The debate raged for hours, but the tide was shifting. Reports of humanity's victories and their willingness to risk everything for coalition lives had begun to outweigh fears of their unpredictability. Meanwhile, in their cells, Sullivan and his crew awaited news. The guards treated them with a mix of awe and unease, as if uncertain whether they were prisoners or heroes. Sullivan paced, stopping occasionally to glance at the stars. "You think they'll cut us loose?" Hayes asked from her cell. "They'll have to," Sullivan replied. "Not because they want to, but because they need us." Murphy chuckled. "Then let's hope they swallow their pride sooner rather than later. The Zephyrians aren't going to wait for a committee decision." As if on cue, a guard entered the detention area. "Captain Sullivan," he said, his voice tinged with respect, "the council has summoned you to a hearing." Sullivan straightened. "A hearing, huh? What's the charge this time? Saving lives?" The guard's lips twitched into a small smile. "You'll find out soon enough, sir. But from what I've heard, this might not be the bad news you're expecting. Human ships, large and small, abandoned their missions and set course for Earth. The rallying cry unified humanity in a way nothing else could. In the Sol system, the human fleet was already preparing for the inevitable. Admiral Brooks stood in the command center of the flagship Endurance, her gaze fixed on the tactical display. "Status of the orbital defenses?" she asked. "Online and fully operational," General Davis replied. "But they won't hold for long against a force this size." "And ground forces?" "Mobilizing. Every militia, every reserve unit, every civilian. Volunteer we can muster. We're turning Earth into a fortress." Brooks nodded. "Good. If they want to take Earth, they'll have to bleed for it." In his detention cell on Proxima Base, Sullivan received the news with grim determination. The guard who delivered it hesitated at the door. "Captain," he said, almost apologetically, "there's no official word, but the scuttlebutt is Earth's going to need every ship, every soldier it can get." Sullivan stepped forward. "Then what are we doing sitting here?" The guard shifted, uncomfortably. "Orders from the council. You're to remain detained until further notice." From the adjacent cell, Murphy scoffed. "Typical. The galaxy's burning, and they're worried about protocol. Sullivan's eyes narrowed. Listen, soldier. You know as well as I do that orders can be bad. You've seen what happens when people like us don't fight. The guard looked torn. Finally, he made a decision. I didn't hear this from you, but there's a shuttle in Dock 17 that's undergoing maintenance. If you happen to find your way there, well, I can't stop you. Sullivan grinned. Thanks. You're making the right call. Minutes later, Sullivan, Hayes, Murphy, and their crew were aboard the shuttle, plotting a course for Earth. The Zephyrian fleet entered Earth's orbit like a tidal wave. Orbital defense platforms fired everything they had, destroying dozens of ships in the opening salvo. But for every enemy vessel destroyed, more took its place. On the surface, human forces braced for impact. Civilians scrambled to shelters, and soldiers took up defensive positions in cities, forests, and mountains. Admiral Brooks addressed the fleet. Today we fight for more than survival. We fight for the right to exist, for our homes, for our families, and for the message we've sent to the galaxy: humanity does not surrender. The battle began. Human ships fought with ferocity unmatched in coalition history, using every trick in the book and inventing new ones on the fly. They fought dirty, they fought smart, and most importantly, they fought to win. As Sullivan's commandeered shuttle approached the Sol system, Hayes leaned over the controls. We're picking up fleet chatter. They're in the thick of it. Sullivan clenched his jaw. Then let's show them what real soldiers look like. The shuttle's engines roared as it accelerated toward the battle. Behind them, a growing number of human ships converged on Earth, answering the call. The galaxy had wanted to keep humanity out of the war. Now they were about to see what happened when humanity decided to fight. The freighters, retrofitted with makeshift weapons and thick plating from their cargo holds, bore down on the Zephyrian forces like a hammer. One of the freighters, Iron Resolve, rammed directly into a Zephyrian cruiser, its reinforced hull crushing the enemy vessel in a burst of fire and debris. From the remaining freighters, powerful industrial lasers designed for mining asteroids burned through enemy shields and hulls with ruthless efficiency. At the same time, Commander Wright's ancient battleships, though slower and less maneuverable than modern vessels, proved their worth in sheer firepower. The Havoc, a century-old dreadnought, unleashed a barrage of kinetic weapons that ripped through Zephyrian formations, earning its name anew. The battle became a chaotic tapestry of destruction. Human ships moved unpredictably, exploiting every weakness, every oversight. The Zephyrian fleet, used to orderly engagements and predictable tactics, began to falter. On the bridge of the Zephyrian command ship, Emperor Carthol slammed his claws against the armrests of his throne. "This is not a war. This is madness." His tactical officer, pale and trembling, replied, "Their methods defy analysis. Every time we adapt, they change the rules again." Carthol's rage turned to a cold realization. They aren't fighting for territory or glory. They fight because they have no choice. As he issued orders to retreat, a transmission came through. Admiral Brooks appeared on the screen, her uniform torn but her gaze steady. "Leaving so soon, Emperor?" she said, her voice laced with defiance. Carthol snarled. "You think you've won today, human? This is only the beginning." Brooks leaned forward. "You're right. It is the beginning of the end for anyone who thinks they can push humanity around. You wanted to know why the galaxy kept us out of the war? Now you know." The Zephyrian fleet began a disorganized retreat, their ships scattering into hyperspace. Earth's defenders let them go. They had won, but at a cost that could still be seen in the burning wreckage and the wounded limping through emergency stations. Admiral Brooks stood in the command center of the Endurance, her shoulders heavy with both exhaustion and pride. "Status?" she asked. General Davis approached, a grim smile on his face. We lost over half our fleet, but we held the line. Earth is safe. Brooks nodded. For now. Across the galaxy, the news of Earth's improbable victory spread like wildfire. Coalition leaders who had doubted humanity's worth watched in stunned silence as reports of human ingenuity and ferocity filled their screens. On Proxima Base, Captain Jake Sullivan sat in a temporary briefing room, surrounded by Coalition officers. One of them, a Yaloran admiral, broke the silence. "Captain Sullivan," he said, his tone reverent, "on behalf of my people, I apologize for doubting your methods. The galaxy owes humanity a debt it can never repay." Sullivan leaned back, his face unreadable. "Don't apologize. Just make sure. The next time someone says humans are too dangerous, you remind them what dangerous can do when it's fighting for the right reasons. Ships, you're getting human determination, ingenuity, and resolve. You're getting warriors who have faced extinction and emerged stronger. You're getting the one species that refuses to back down when everything is on the line." He paused, letting his words settle over the assembly. Representatives from countless species, some stoic, some visibly moved, leaned forward, hanging on his every word. "But know this," Sullivan continued, his voice hardening. "We will fight to protect, to defend, and to preserve peace. But we will not fight without cause, and we will not be pawns in someone else's game. When humanity takes the field, it does so on its own terms, with its own rules, and those rules are simple: win, survive, protect." The chamber erupted in a mixture of applause, solemn nods, and reverent silence. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council had hoped that the tide of the war could truly turn. As Sullivan stepped down from the podium, he caught the eye of Ambassador Parker. She smiled, a mixture of pride and relief. The galaxy would never forget this moment. Humanity had risen not just as warriors, but as leaders, protectors, and a force to be reckoned with. Their methods may have been unconventional, their tactics brutal, but their resolve was unshakable. This passage delivers a powerful conclusion, emphasizing humanity's indispensable role in galactic defense. It encapsulates themes of redemption, unity, and the necessity of embracing unorthodox methods in dire situations. The poignant statement about monsters of your own highlights a stark truth. Sometimes extraordinary threats require extraordinary responses. Humanity's acceptance as a critical ally symbolizes a shift in perception, from viewing their methods as a liability to recognizing them as a strength. The closing sentiment, how the nature of warfare changes with humanity's involvement, resonates as a testament to their adaptability and resilience. This sets the stage for a future where Earth's role in the galaxy isn't just about survival, but leadership, guiding others through the challenges of an unpredictable and dangerous universe.